This year, to celebrate Heritage Open Day, Norfolk Record Office has teamed up with Wensum Lodge to share with you some extracts from our sound archives, which have recently been digitally preserved through a national audio preservation project called Unlocking Our Sound Heritage. The River Wensum runs through the heart of Norwich, a scenic backdrop to the heart of our fine city and to the buildings of Wensum Lodge. Today, the river that snakes its way through our city centre is enjoyed by many who walk its banks or take to the water in boats or canoes. The river, however, once had much more of a vital role in the functioning of the city and was a key component in Norwich's industrial history. The river once played a key role for Wensum Lodge, a site that is steeped in history, formerly operating as the young Crawshay and Young's Crown Brewery from 1897 to 1958. Wensum Lodge occupies the brewery's few remaining buildings. However, the original site was much larger, with 3 acres of land dominating much of the area between King Street and the river. With the river running so closely adjacent to King Street, it served a key role in the industrialisation of the area, allowing deliveries to be transported via boat to and from not only the brewery, but the many other businesses that operated on King Street, including the large neighbouring site of Reed's Flour Mill. The Wensum, which today is relatively quiet, would have once been alive with river traffic, and we are now going to share with you the memories of former King Street residents, recalling the riverside hustle and bustle of the early 20th century.
Well, whilst we're down there, should we just pause at the river a second? Was that constant traffic up and down the river?
Barges, lorries, lighters.
Well, I mean, there was Coleman's, then there was Reed's, the flour mills. They used to have to have all that flour delivered and everything, you see.
Oh yes, there was boats up and down there all the while, like barges type. And then you'd get the big boats from perhaps Holland, Dutch boats used to pull into Reed's Flour Mill.
You go down an old barge yard where the river was, and you'll find a boat pull up there, and there's a big building there, storage building, and you come up with the ice in the boat, and the big blocks of ice like that, they grapple it and take it into this ice storage place. That was the butchers used to have that, and all the sorts of people.
In summertime there'd be 50 or 60, without exaggeration, there'd be 50 or 60 blokes, young people, old people, all swimming in the river. And there was no surge as it is now, so you can imagine what that was like.
And then we had the little pleasure boats, the Yarmouth Belle and the Doris, that used to come up. And that used to come up regular about 1:10 on, I think that was on a Wednesday. And us kids got to know that, you see, and they used to be a lookout, and they used to stand at the bottom of Abbey Lane and shout out, "Here comes the boat, here comes the boat." And all us children, we used to scamper down on what we called the plain, near the motorway there. And as the people went past, we used to chant, "Throw your old carpets over." And they used to throw the pennies and the halfpennies over. And all us children used to scamper about to pick the money up as that slowly went past. Well, they had that probably all the way from Cara Bridge. The kiddies had the same idea. So all the openings to the waterfront, they were throwing the old carpets over. And then at low tide, those what didn't land over on the bank, of course, fell in the river bed, and at low tide, some of the bigger boys used to go hunting for these old carpets to pick up.
For much of the 20th century, King Street was an established area for brewing, with not only the young Crawshay and Young's Crown Brewery, but also a second and older site, the Morgan's Brewery, in operation. Perhaps as a result of this, the streets also boasted many public houses.
In King Street, was reckoned and must still be the longest street in the city from Upper King Street to Brackendale. But King Street in those days had 47 pubs.
Yeah.
Now in one section of King Street alone I could put my hand on a dozen where I lived.
Many of the houses of King Street that still stand today were once owned by the breweries and home to their workers.
And you come along and that, you come to Younger's Brewery. Younger's had all that brewery there. That's where they brewed the beer. Best lot of beer in Norwich.
The brewery itself, I didn't say that was facing all along King Street, that part, but that was sort of well down. You see, that was more near the riverside. The river ran along the side of the brewery, as it does now, doesn't it?
When I was a boy, they used to come in with the sugar, barley sugar, before they mixed it in the beer. Oh, my father, he in a puddle there, he used to bring my lump sometimes, give us kids to eat. Lovely, that barley sugar.
You also mentioned the brewery houses. What does that mean, that the brewery owned them?
The brewery owned them.
And the people in those houses?
They worked for the brewery. Now, where I lived, all shipyard, and up what we called up the yard, there were 6 houses in, and they were brewery, and all people worked at the brewery. You know where Wensum Lodge is? Opposite there's a row of houses. Well, they were all brewery people. The music house then, the original music house, that was a public house when I was a little girl, and then that turned into an architect's office, and you used to go up there and pay your rent. I wasn't very much rent, it was about £5 a week, but they were very good landlords. I mean, to say they were good landlords.
We felt that we were part of it. There was no strangeness. We knew the men. And of course, where we lived in Shipyard, there was the breakfast room. They called the breakfast room. Well, every morning, the men who worked in what they called the ton room, that was a little bit on the wet side because they were washing out barrels and everything, and they used to wear these old clogs. You'd hear them clomping up our yard, and then they'd come to the breakfast room, they'd have their breakfast. And that was only one room. There was sort of the bench and more like the picnic tables of today with the seats, and they would sit there and they would smell up and fried eggs and bacon. They'd sort of bring their goods from home, and then they'd fry their breakfast up and they'd have a smoke and off they'd go.
Did they start work very early in the morning?
Yes.
And that's why they had a breakfast break
Yes,
later on?
They started work very early.
You come along, as I say, a Younger's Brewery, and after that was their storage place where they stored the spirits. And the cart would pull up. And they load the spirits on there. And the other side was the brewery where they load the beer on, you see. They'd load the beer on and then they'd come across the street and load the spirits up.
My grandfather, he was a drayman at Younger's Brewery, and of course his job was he used to go around the country, Dis and Attleborough, taking the beer round, and every day they were out on the rounds, and every pub he visited they used to say, well, come on Jack, have a drink, and of course by the end of the day, about 5 o'clock, he would be well and truly oiled, and he would have all the money. He'd collect all the money, and he would be perhaps on the cart all on his own, and he would get on and he would then make for home. He would get on the old dray cart, put the horses into gear, and they would bring him home. He would be sound asleep on the dray cart. They would walk him home from Dis. No rains or anything. They would bring him home to the brewery gates, and the night watchman would say, come on Jack, wake up, and he'd wake him up, and the money would all be intact. The horses would then be put into the stables, and grandfather would go home. By then he'd sort of sobered up because he'd slept off, and grandmother'd be waiting with his supper, and some nights if he was too drunk to that didn't pass off, he'd sort of fall in the doorway.
Unlocking Our Sound Heritage is a national project to preserve the UK's sound archives. ensuring that they are safeguarded for future generations. The project is chaired by the British Library, working in partnership with 10 UK-wide organisations. Norfolk Record Office is the East of England Unlocking Our Sound Heritage Hub, working to digitally preserve rare and at-risk sound recordings from across the eastern counties. Unlocking Our Sound Heritage is made possible due to the support of the National Lottery Heritage Fund. Wensum Lodge has been home to Norfolk County Council's Adult Education Service for over 40 years, now known as Adult Learning. Adult Learning offers Norfolk residents the opportunity to gain new skills and qualifications via accredited courses, as well as providing community and leisure programs to support health and well-being, and family learning to support adults and children to achieve. From the former brewery buildings, you can now take part in craft-based workshops. Adult Learning deliver courses in ceramics and pottery, where you can learn to produce three-dimensional sculpture or learn to throw pots on the pottery wheel. Silversmithing is also offered, as well as drawing and painting in a range of media. Current learners enjoy and take inspiration from the riverside views while learning new skills.